The boardroom fell into a silence so complete that Cassandra Voss could hear the distant hum of the city 53 floors below. 27 executives sat frozen around the mahogany table, their eyes darting between their CEO and the man who had just committed career suicide. The air was thick with tension, the kind that preceded a storm, and everyone knew it. Cassandra Voss did not tolerate insubordination. She did not tolerate excuses. And she absolutely did not tolerate being challenged. But the man standing at the far end of the table, his hands resting casually on the polished wood, was doing exactly that. His name was Griffin Thorne, and he had been with Voss Industries for exactly 6 months. He was 37 years old, a widower, and the father of twin 6-year-old girls. His file was unremarkable: mid-level analyst, decent performance reviews, no red flags. Except for the fact that he was currently staring down the most powerful woman in Ethelberg as if she were just another person in a crowded room. Cassandra rose from her leather chair with the fluid grace of a predator. She was tall, impossibly so in her 4-inch heels, with sharp cheekbones and eyes the color of winter frost. Her dark hair was pulled back in a severe bun, not a single strand out of place. She wore a tailored black suit that probably cost more than most people's annual rent, and her expression was one of controlled fury. "Mr. Thorne," she said, her voice silk wrapped around steel, "your projections are overly optimistic. I despise optimism. It suggests you haven't accounted for the variables that will inevitably destroy this project. Are you suggesting that you know more about my company than I do?" The other executives shifted uncomfortably in their seats. They had seen this before. The Ice Queen was about to eviscerate another victim, and they were about to watch. It was a spectator sport at Voss Industries, and the spectators were always grateful it wasn't them in the crosshairs. But Griffin Thorne did not flinch. He met her gaze directly, his hazel eyes steady and calm. "With respect, Ms. Voss, my projections account for every variable. I have cross-referenced the data with 3 independent sources. I have stress-tested the model against every possible economic downturn. And yes, I am absolutely suggesting that I know something you don't." A collective gasp rippled through the room. No one spoke to Cassandra Voss like that. No one. The last person who had tried had been escorted out of the building by security, his reputation in ruins. But Griffin Thorne simply stood there, waiting, his expression unreadable. Cassandra's lips curved into something that was not quite a smile. She was intrigued. She hated being intrigued. It was a weakness, and she did not have weaknesses. "You have 10 minutes, she said, sitting back down. "Convince me you're not a liability. Use them wisely." Griffin nodded and began to speak. His voice was calm, measured, utterly confident. He walked the board through his projections step by step, explaining his methodology with a clarity that made even the most skeptical executives nod along. He anticipated questions before they were asked and answered them with a patience that seemed almost unnatural. By the time his 10 minutes were up, Cassandra knew 2 things. 1, his projections were flawless. And 2, she was in trouble. She was 34 years old, the youngest CEO in Voss Industries' 100-year history. She had inherited the company from her father, a man who had taught her that love was weakness and emotion was a liability. Her mother had proved him right by leaving when Cassandra was 6, walking out of their lives without so much as a backward glance. Her father had remarried quickly, a woman who treated Cassandra with cold indifference. The man she had almost married, the only man she had ever let herself care about, had chosen her rival's daughter over her, a woman with a better pedigree, a warmer smile, and the ability to give him the children Cassandra could not. That had been the final blow. After that, Cassandra had locked her heart away in a vault and thrown away the key. She had dedicated herself entirely to her work, pouring every ounce of her energy into building an empire that would outlast her. She worked 18-hour days, attended endless meetings, and crushed anyone who stood in her way. The board feared her. Her assistants quit within months. Her rivals in business spoke of her as the Ice Queen of Ethelberg, a woman with no heart and no soul. And then Griffin Thorne had walked into her boardroom and looked at her like she was just another person. She hated it. She hated the way he made her feel like a fraud, like the walls she had built were made of paper. She hated the way he smiled, warm and genuine, when he thought no one was watching. She hated the way his voice dropped an octave when he was explaining something complex, the way his patience never seemed to run out, the way his hazel eyes seemed to see right through her. She especially hated the pictures on his desk. Two little girls with wild dark curls and matching gap-toothed smiles. Their names were Hazel and Ruby, and they were 6 years old. They had lost their mother 3 years ago, and their father had been raising them alone ever since. The pictures showed them at the park, at the beach, at school plays. They showed a family that was broken but still full of love. Cassandra had never wanted children. She had never allowed herself to want children. Her body had made that decision for her when she was 28, when a battery of tests had confirmed what she had always suspected. She could never bear a child. The doctors had used clinical terms: anovulatory infertility, uterine abnormalities, less than 2% chance of ever conceiving. She had listened to them with a frozen expression, nodded politely, and walked out of the clinic without shedding a single tear. She had never told anyone. Not her father, who would have seen it as another failure. Not the man she had almost married, who would have used it as an excuse to leave her. Not anyone. But when she looked at those pictures of Hazel and Ruby, she felt something crack open in her chest. A longing so deep and so painful that it frightened her. "You're staring," Griffin said one evening, catching her gaze as she passed by his cubicle. The office was empty, the janitorial staff already making their rounds. The city lights twinkled through the floor-to-ceiling windows, casting long shadows across the deserted workspace. Griffin was still at his desk, his tie loosened, his sleeves rolled up to reveal strong forearms. He looked tired but content, the way men looked when they had just finished something meaningful. Cassandra blinked, startled out of her reverie. "I was not staring," she said quickly, her cheeks flushing. She never blushed. She was the Ice Queen. She did not blush. "I was simply thinking." "About what?" He leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms. There was a hint of amusement in his eyes, and it made her want to slap him and kiss him in equal measure. "About your projections," she lied. "I wanted to review them one more time before the quarterly meeting." "Sure you did," he said, and his smile widened. "That's why you've been standing here for 5 minutes, staring at my desk. My desk, which is covered in pictures of my daughters." Cassandra opened her mouth to deny it, but the words died in her throat. He had caught her. She was caught. And for the first time in as long as she could remember, she had no clever retort. "I'm sorry," she finally managed. "I didn't mean to intrude. Your daughters are very beautiful. I was just admiring them." Griffin's expression softened. "Thank you," he said. "They're monsters, but they're beautiful monsters. They get it from their mother." "I read about what happened," Cassandra said quietly. "I don't mean to pry. I wanted you to know that I'm sorry for your loss." "It's fine," he said, and his voice was gentle. "It's been 3 years. The grief doesn't go away, but it changes. It becomes something you carry instead of something that carries you." Cassandra nodded, not trusting her voice. She had never lost anyone she loved. She had never allowed herself to love anyone that deeply. The closest she had come was the man who had chosen someone else, and even that had been a pale imitation of the love Griffin had for his wife. "Thank you for sharing that," she finally said. "Most people wouldn't have been so open with me." "Most people are scared of you," Griffin said bluntly. "I'm not." And there it was again. That infuriating honesty. She should have been offended. She should have dressed him down, reminded him of his place. Instead, she felt a rush of warmth in her chest, something that was dangerously close to admiration. "Good night, Mr. Thorne," she said, turning to walk away. "Good night, Ms. Voss," he called after her. "And for what it's worth, I think you're a lot more human than you let on." She didn't turn around. She couldn't. If she turned around, he would see the tears that were threatening to spill down her cheeks. And she couldn't let him see that. She couldn't let anyone see that. But she knew, with a certainty that settled in her bones like a cold dread, that she was in trouble. Deep, impossible trouble. The company gala was 3 weeks later. It was an annual event, a grand affair held at the Ethelberg Grand Hotel, where the city's elite gathered to sip champagne and network with the powerful. Cassandra had always dreaded it. The small talk, the false smiles, the endless parade of people who wanted something from her. It was exhausting. But this year, she found herself looking forward to it. This year, Griffin Thorne would be there. She spent 2 hours choosing her dress. It was a deep emerald gown that matched her eyes, with a plunging neckline and a slit that went all the way up her thigh. It was bold. It was beautiful. It was completely inappropriate for a woman who was supposed to be cold and untouchable. She told herself she was dressing to impress the shareholders. She was lying. When she arrived at the ballroom, her eyes immediately found him. He was standing near the bar, looking devastatingly handsome in a simple black tuxedo that probably cost less than her shoes. His dark hair was swept back, and his jaw was freshly shaved. He was talking to one of the junior executives, a young woman named Penelope who was batting her eyelashes with embarrassing enthusiasm. Penelope was 23, fresh out of business school, and utterly beautiful. She had honey blonde hair and a smile that could charm the birds from the trees. She was also, Cassandra noticed with a surge of something hot and unpleasant in her chest, touching Griffin's arm. Jealousy. The word hit her like a slap. She had never been jealous in her life. Why would she be? She was Cassandra Voss, the most powerful woman in Ethelberg. She had everything: money, power, respect. But watching Penelope touch Griffin made her want to walk over there and tear the young woman's hand off. Before she could stop herself, Cassandra was striding across the ballroom, her heels clicking against the marble floor like a death knell. The crowd parted for her, instinctively stepping out of her way. When she reached Griffin and Penelope, she was breathing hard, her heart pounding in her chest. "Ms. Voss," Penelope said, straightening up. "You look stunning tonight." "Thank you," Cassandra said, not looking at her. Her eyes were fixed on Griffin. "Mr. Thorne. May I have a word?" "Of course," Griffin said, and there was a knowing glint in his eyes that made her want to scream. She led him to a quiet corner of the ballroom, away from the crowds and the noise. The music was softer here, the lights dimmer. She could smell his cologne, something woodsy and warm that made her want to lean closer and bury her face in his neck. "You look beautiful," he said, and her heart stuttered. "I mean that. You look like you belong on a magazine cover." "I don't care about magazine covers," Cassandra said, her voice sharper than she intended. "I care about my company. And I care about my employees. Which is why I need to tell you something." "What?" She hesitated. The words were on the tip of her tongue, but they felt foolish. Petty. Beneath her. Cassandra Voss did not get jealous over men. She did not get jealous over anyone. "Penelope," she finally said. "You shouldn't date her." Griffin's eyebrows shot up. "I'm sorry." "Penelope," Cassandra repeated. "She's a junior executive. She's young. She's impressionable. Dating her would be unprofessional. It would create a conflict of interest. It would be a liability to the company." Griffin stared at her for a long moment. Then, slowly, his expression shifted from confusion to amusement. I wasn't planning on dating her. We were just talking. She was telling me about her cat. Her cat, Cassandra repeated flatly. Her cat. It's very fluffy. It has a habit of knocking things off tables. Apparently, it once knocked over a vase that belonged to her grandmother. It was a very dramatic story. Griffin was smiling now, that infuriatingly charming smile that made her knees feel weak. Why do you care if I date her? Cassandra opened her mouth. Closed it. Opened it again. She felt like a fish gasping for air. I don't care. I'm simply advising you as your CEO. You're not my CEO right now, he said quietly. Right now, you're just Cassandra. And I'm just Griffin. And I'm asking you a question. He stepped closer, and she could feel the heat radiating from his body. Why do you care if I date someone else? She couldn't breathe. I don't. Liar. His voice was soft, almost gentle. You're a terrible liar, you know. For someone so powerful, you're absolutely awful at hiding what you're feeling. I'm not feeling anything, she said, but her voice cracked on the last word. Griffin reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. The gesture was so intimate, so unexpected, that she froze. His fingers brushed against her cheek, and she felt a shiver run down her spine. Are you jealous? He asked. The question hung between them, heavy with possibility. Cassandra's heart was pounding so hard she was sure he could hear it. She should have denied it. She should have laughed it off, made a cutting remark, walked away. She should have done any number of things that would have preserved her dignity and protected her heart. But she couldn't. Yes, she whispered. Griffin's eyes widened. What? I said yes. Her voice was stronger now, defiant. Yes, I'm jealous. I'm jealous of Penelope. I'm jealous of anyone who gets to stand next to you, to make you smile, to make you laugh. I'm jealous of your daughters because they get to see you every day, and I don't. I'm jealous of your wife because she had you first. I'm jealous of every woman who has ever so much as looked at you. She was rambling now, the words tumbling out of her like a dam breaking. I'm jealous, Griffin. And I hate it. I hate it because I'm supposed to be above this. I'm supposed to be the ice queen, the woman who doesn't need anyone. But I need you. God help me, I need you. She stopped, breathless, mortified. She had just poured out her soul to a man who probably thought she was insane. She had revealed her deepest vulnerability, her greatest weakness. She had given him the power to destroy her. Griffin stared at her for a long moment. His expression was unreadable, and Cassandra felt her heart sink. She had ruined everything. She had pushed him away, just like she pushed everyone away. And then he started to laugh. It wasn't a mocking laugh. It was a laugh of pure, unadulterated joy. His whole face lit up, his eyes crinkling at the corners, and Cassandra felt her embarrassment melt away. Cassandra, he said, still chuckling. Cassandra Voss, the most terrifying woman in Ethelberg, is jealous of a junior executive's cat. Shut up, she muttered, but she was smiling too. I'm not going to shut up, he said. I'm going to tell you that you're an idiot. Excuse me? An idiot, he repeated. A magnificent, brilliant, absolutely ridiculous idiot. You didn't have to be jealous. You didn't have to compete with Penelope or anyone else. Because there was never anyone else. There was only you. Cassandra blinked. What? From the moment I saw you, I was done, Griffin said. You walked into that boardroom and you looked at me like I was beneath you, and I thought, that's the woman I'm going to marry. I knew it. Right then. You were so fierce, so untouchable, and all I wanted was to touch you. To be the one who broke through those walls you've built. But I'm cold, she said. I'm difficult. I'm impossible. I know, he said, smiling. That's why I love you. The word hit her like a physical blow. Love. No one had ever said that to her. Not her father, who had treated her like a business asset. Not her mother, who had abandoned her. Not the man she had almost married, who had chosen a woman with a better pedigree. No one had ever loved her. Don't say that, she whispered. Don't say it unless you mean it. I mean it, Griffin said. I love you, Cassandra. I love your sharp edges and your impossible standards. I love the way you crinkle your nose when you're thinking. I love the way you can't stand incompetence. I love that you're afraid of being loved, because it means you want it so badly it terrifies you. He reached out and took both of her hands in his. I love you. And I'm going to spend the rest of my life proving it to you. If you'll let me. Cassandra felt tears prick at her eyes. She blinked them back fiercely. What about your daughters? They don't know me. They won't. They'll adore you, he said. They already do. I talk about you constantly. They think you're some kind of superhero. I'm not a superhero, she said. I'm just a woman who doesn't know how to be loved. Then let me teach you, he said. Let me teach you. She didn't answer with words. She leaned forward and kissed him. It was everything she had imagined and more. His lips were warm, his arms wrapping around her waist and pulling her close. She melted into him, her hands tangling in his hair, her heart soaring in her chest. When they finally broke apart, she was breathless and trembling. Wow, Griffin said, his voice husky. Wow indeed, Cassandra managed. We should probably talk about logistics, he said. The girls, my job, your reputation. Shut up, Cassandra said, kissing him again. She had spent her whole life being practical. She had earned her success by never making a move without calculating the consequences. But this was different. This was a gamble, the biggest gamble of her life. And for the first time, Cassandra Voss was willing to lose. A week later, Cassandra met the twins. They came to her office, two small figures clutching their father's hands and staring at the massive skyscraper with wide eyes. Hazel and Ruby were exactly as adorable as their pictures suggested. They had their father's dark curls and their late mother's warm brown eyes. They were dressed in matching pink dresses, their hair held back with sparkly clips, and they looked up at Cassandra like she was some kind of mythical creature. You're the pretty lady from the pictures, Hazel finally said, her voice shy. Your father showed you pictures of me? Cassandra asked, looking at Griffin accusingly. Just a few, he said innocently. They asked. She wears fancy clothes, Ruby added. Like a princess. She is a princess, Griffin said, pulling Cassandra into a hug. My princess. The girls giggled, and Cassandra felt something crack open in her chest. This was what she had been missing. This was what she had convinced herself she didn't need. Over the next few months, Cassandra became a fixture in their lives. She attended soccer games and school plays. She helped with homework and cooked dinner on weekends. She learned that Hazel was afraid of thunderstorms and Ruby was allergic to peanuts. She learned that Hazel loved to paint and Ruby loved to read. She learned that Griffin snored, that he couldn't fold laundry to save his life, and that he woke up every morning with the messiest bedhead she had ever seen. She loved every second of it. But she was still scared. It happened on a quiet Sunday afternoon. The girls were at a birthday party, and Cassandra was helping Griffin organize the garage. He was sorting through boxes, labeling them with a permanency that she found endearing. She was sitting on an old stool, watching him work. Griffin, she said. He looked up. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong, she said quickly. I need to tell you something. He set down the box and came to sit beside her. I'm listening. I've never told anyone this, she said. Not my father, not the man I almost married. No one. Tell me, he said, taking her hand. Cassandra took a deep breath. When I was 28, I found out I couldn't have children. It's a medical condition. There's nothing they can do about it. My doctor said it's extremely rare, that there's a chance it could happen, but it's less than 2%. And I accepted it. I told myself I didn't want children anyway. I told myself it was better this way, that I could focus on my career. She paused, her voice breaking. But then I met you. And I met Hazel and Ruby. And I realized that I want it. So badly. I want to have a child with you. A child that's ours. And I can't. I can't give you that. Griffin was quiet for a moment. Then he pulled her into his arms, holding her tightly against his chest. Is that what you've been worrying about? He asked softly. All this time? Yes, she whispered. I thought you'd leave. That you'd want someone who could give you a son. Someone who could. Cassandra, he said, pulling back to look at her. Do you think I care about that? I don't know, she admitted. I don't know what you care about. I care about you, he said fiercely. I care about the life we're building. I care about the girls. I don't need a biological child to be happy. I have 2 beautiful daughters who already love you like a mother. And if we want to expand our family, there are other ways. There's adoption. There's surrogacy. There are 100 ways to build a family. But none of them matter if I don't have you. Cassandra sobbed, a sound she didn't know she was capable of making. She buried her face in his chest, and he held her until the tears stopped. I love you, she said, her voice muffled. I love you too, he said. And I'm going to marry you. One day. When you're ready. I'm ready now, she said, looking up at him. I've been ready since the night you called me a terrible liar. Griffin laughed. You're impossible. And you love me. I do, he said. God help me, I do. Their wedding was small and intimate. Hazel and Ruby were flower girls, and they took their job very seriously. They wore matching white dresses and scattered rose petals with the enthusiasm only 6-year-olds could muster. Cassandra wore a simple silk gown, and Griffin wore a navy suit that matched his eyes. They said their vows under a canopy of flowers in Griffin's backyard. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. It was perfect. I promise to be your partner in everything, Griffin said. I promise to support you, to challenge you, to love you even when you're being impossible. I promise to never let you build your walls back up. I promise to always fight for us. Cassandra smiled through her tears. I promise to let you love me, she said. I promise to be vulnerable, even when it terrifies me. I promise to be a mother to your children, a partner in your dreams, and the fiercest ally you'll ever have. I promise to never walk away, no matter how scared I am. I promise to love you until the end of time. They kissed, and the girls cheered, and the small crowd of friends and colleagues applauded. It was the happiest moment of Cassandra's life. 5 years later, Cassandra sat in her office, looking out at the city she had conquered. She was no longer the CEO of Voss Industries. She had stepped down 2 years ago to focus on her family. She had started a foundation instead, one that provided scholarships to underprivileged children. It was her new legacy, and it was infinitely more meaningful than the corporate empire she had left behind. Her phone buzzed. A text from Griffin. The girls are driving me crazy. They want to know if you're coming home for dinner. They're planning a living room concert and they need an audience. Also, Ruby wants to know if you can bring more of those chocolate chip cookies you made last week. She says they're the best thing she's ever eaten. Cassandra smiled. She typed back, "Tell them I'll be there. I wouldn't miss it for the world. And yes, I'll bring cookies." She packed up her things and headed for the door. As she walked through the building, she passed a group of young interns. They stared at her with a mix of awe and fear. She was still a legend in the corporate world, the woman who had built an empire and then walked away from it for love. "Ms. Voss," one of them said, her voice trembling. "Is it true? Is it true you gave up everything for a man?" Cassandra stopped. She turned to face the young woman, her expression softening. "I didn't give up anything," she said. "I gained everything. I gained a husband who loves me, 2 daughters who adore me, and a life that's worth living. I gained a family. And that's worth more than all the money in the world." The intern nodded, her eyes wide. Cassandra smiled and walked away. When she got home, the girls were waiting for her with their makeshift instruments. A guitar Griffin had taught himself to play, a tambourine, and a kazoo. They launched into a chaotic rendition of a song Cassandra had never heard before, complete with off-key singing and enthusiastic dancing. She clapped and laughed and cheered. She joined them in their performance, dancing around the living room like she had no cares in the world. For the first time in her life, she felt completely, utterly free. Later that night, after the girls were in bed, Cassandra and Griffin sat on the porch, watching the stars. The city lights twinkled in the distance, but here, in their little corner of the world, everything was peaceful. "Thank you," she said softly. "For what?" "For not giving up on me. For seeing through my walls. For loving me even when I was impossible." Griffin took her hand. "Thank you for letting me in. For trusting me with your heart. For becoming the woman I always knew you could be." Cassandra leaned her head on his shoulder. "I love you, Griffin Thorne." "I love you too, Cassandra Thorne," he said. "Now let's go to bed. We have a full day of living room concerts and dance parties tomorrow. The girls have already planned the entire day." She laughed, and it was the most beautiful sound in the world. "They're just like you. Always planning. Someone has to keep us organized," he said, kissing the top of her head. "That's what families do. They keep each other organized. They show up for each other. They love each other, even when it's hard." Cassandra thought about her father, sitting alone in his cold mansion, surrounded by money and emptiness. She thought about her mother, who had walked away and never looked back. She thought about the years she had spent convinced that she didn't deserve love, that she was too broken to be loved. And then she looked at the man beside her, the man who had seen her at her worst and loved her anyway. She thought about the 2 little girls sleeping inside, who had accepted her without reservation, who called her Mama and meant it. She had spent her whole life building an empire. She had clawed her way to the top, crushing anyone who stood in her way. She had been cold, ruthless, untouchable. But none of that mattered anymore. Because she had found something more valuable than power. She had found love. She had found family. She had found herself. And she was never letting go. The Ice Queen of Ethelberg had melted. And in her place was a woman who was finally, completely, undeniably whole. Cassandra Voss had spent her whole life running from love. She had convinced herself she didn't need it, that it was a weakness, a distraction. She had built walls so high and so thick that no one could get through. But love had found her anyway. It had found her in a boardroom, in the form of a man who refused to be intimidated by her. It had found her in the laughter of 2 little girls who had lost their mother but still had room in their hearts for a stranger. It had found her in quiet Sunday afternoons, in chaotic family dinners, in living room concerts and bedtime stories. And now, Sitting on the porch with her husband by her side, Cassandra knew that she was exactly where she was meant to be. Not in a cold, empty penthouse, surrounded by money and power. Not in a boardroom, crushing her competitors and building an empire. But here. In this warm, chaotic house filled with love and laughter. She had learned, finally, that true success isn't measured in money or power. It's measured in the hearts you touch and the lives you change. And she had changed the lives of 3 people, her husband and her daughters, just as they had changed hers. She was Cassandra Thorne, wife, mother, and the happiest woman in the world. And she was never letting go.